not the primary purpose of the space. And it's not a market space. It's not like a collection of the services that the person can install and access. It's much more broader than that. So I get a question for you. What do you think Metaverse really is? You can just spend a minute or so, just type your answers, and we will go from there. Yeah, the metaverse is actually quite simple. It's a platform, but it will be the most sophisticated digital platform people ever created. The platform for everything, for business or sport, pleasure, anything, and it will consist of a few essential blocks. And these blocks are augmented reality and virtual reality, blockchain and Web 3.0, and services. By services, I mean the digital services that the user can access in this virtual space. From the conceptual perspective, it will be a successor to the internet. It will be some kind of a system that will people access, but it will be the most sophisticated system because it will be created, it will inherit of these three integral properties. It will be social experience. People will create, explore, identify, express, and collaborate and socialize in that space. It will be persistent experience. It never pauses or ends. That's the difference in comparison to the games or movies. It will be strong. It will have a strong economical system. Just like in our real world has an economy, the metaverse, the economy in the metaverse will play an integral role. We will cover that in details in the part 4 of this presentation, but right now I just want to stress this fact. And the last but not least, it will be a result of collaborative work. Just like our real world, we collaborate with each other, we interact, and we create something. Just like that, the metaverse will be created by contributors. The contributor can be the company or the individual. And I really like this slide that depict the 7 layers of the metaverse. Just spend a couple of seconds to check this slide. On a basic level, on ground level, it will be infrastructure that will support sophisticated system. And then on top of that, it will be experience that user actually access. So now when we know what the metaverse is, let's cover 2 integral parts of the metaverse. And one of the parts is the user avatar. User avatar is how we will represent ourselves in the metaverse. The realistic presence is a key to create a connected experience. And the question I got for you is how realistic the avatar should be. Should it be ultra realistic or should it be abstract? Just share your ideas. You can just type them in the messages here, and we'll go from there. Yeah, we have the first reply, abstract. Just don't be shy, just write your ideas, and I'm just really excited to hear what you think about that. Okay. Well, we have 2 different ways we can design avatars. First, we can create the ultra-realistic avatars, like created using the tool like OBIN. On this image, you can see that the avatar conveys a lot of properties that the real person has. But it can be the avatar like we have in the Minecraft. It's ultra-realistic avatar, ultra-abstract avatar. The point is, as I think, we need to find the right balance. And why we need to do that is because creating ultra-realistic avatar will require a lot of computational power, and it's not necessary to create an immersive experience, because as long as we just create essential properties of a human face and characteristic of the person, we are doing well. What is more important is offer an exclusive experience. What I mean by that, we have different skin tones, different haircuts, different eyes, lips, and other properties of our face. And we want just our avatar resemble who we are in the virtual space. Of course, not just who we are exactly. We might want to have a better version of ourselves, but I think you understand what I mean here. If you play a game like The Sims, you likely spend some time tweaking the characteristic of your character. The same approach will apply to your digital avatar. Also, what is more important in the virtual space is the clothing. Clothing will be an integral part of the customization, because people constantly seek out the opportunities for self-expression, and clothing is one of the attributes that we use to portray a certain image. It's clear that clothing brands will have an important role in the metaverse. If you remember the Mark Zuckerberg presentation, well, he demonstrated the concept of the metaverse and said that the company is now called the Meta. He spent some time finding the right outfit for his avatar. Even the Mark, who doesn't pay really much attention to the clothing, he still spends some time to do that. So I think that clothing will be used to communicate who we are in that space. And some fashion designers, they understand that, and they think of the virtual clothing as an interesting canvas. It allows them explore and try different approaches, even the crazy one. And the interesting thing is that some clothing that the companies will create for the metaverse users, they will create the trends, the fashion trends, and the new fashion trends will emerge in that virtual space, and then the most successful outfits will be available as the physical items. So that's what I think about the clothing. But when it comes to visual appearance, we also have the two options that we can use. First option is use full body avatars, and another option is use half body avatars, top body to be exact. And if you think the top body avatars, most probably you remember the Horizon World, the social network created owned by Meta right now. They use half body avatars, top body part. And the problem with this approach, it doesn't look really realistic. It's actually break the sense of immersion, because when you see only the part of the body, our brain will tell us that this is fake. The Meta primarily use the top body avatars because of the limitation of the current system, unable to track legs, and as a result, unable to develop kinematics. But anyway, it looks really bad for our understanding. So even when we use cartoon avatars like mid-fidelity avatar with not so many realistic parts, it's much better to create full body avatars like on this slide created by Janice, rather than use the top body avatars. What is more important is to offer the quick process of the creation of the avatars. And the great thing about that, we already have the tech that allow us to do that. Latest iPhone can track 30,000 points on a 5-link face app. This app allows users to create real-time, Unreal-based, high-fidelity avatars in a few minutes. So it doesn't require too much effort from the user. It's also important to convey facial expression because being able to present with the other person in a visual space is what makes the experience more immersive. And we interact with this charger not only with words, but also with our micro expressions. And many companies work in this direction too. One of them is the Viso. They transfer emotions and facial expressions to VR. But Facebook is also experimented, Meta is also experimented in this domain, the project called Cambria, that they described during the presentation, also allow conveying emotions. Taking all effort required to create the avatar, it's important to make the avatar available for the all virtual worlds, because the metaverse won't be the single world that the users will access, but rather than a collection of the different worlds that they access and being a part of that. And at one moment, users might want to visit a virtual office, and another moment they wanted to join a virtual game. Users shouldn't be forced to create a new avatar every time they want to join a new world. That is why the idea of using avatar as ID becomes really interesting, because as soon as the user will create the avatar, they will use it to access different kind of services, because some kind of services might not be allowed for the user. And if we will just allow the user to use it as an identity, it will make the life much easier for service creators and the users. Okay, now let's move to the third part of our presentation and discuss the immersive 3D space. When I mentioned that the metaverse will be the successor of the internet, what I mean really was a completely new way of how we interact with the content, how we experience it. We will move from the flat content to spatial, three-dimensional spaces. Again, just like in that Mark showed us in the presentation in October 2021, the metaverse will be three-dimensional simulation with virtual worlds that will be filled with millions of 3D objects. So I have another question to you. Just how can we create this massive number of objects for the virtual environment, taking into account that the process of creating 3D objects takes a lot of time and money? Is there a way we can easily create that? Just write your ideas and we'll discuss them. Okay. Well, the easiest way to do that is actually transfer real world objects into the metaverse. And how it will look like. Users likely have a lot of objects in their environments, and they use the tech devices that they have to just create the digital twins of the physical spaces and the physical objects in their environments. They will simply scan the objects around them and produce high quality visual assets. And good news, we don't need to create any new special tag for that. Our iPhones is capable of that. The dark cameras that we have in our iPhones can be used to build photorealistic objects like we can see on this slide. The technology that Apple suggested is called object capture. And it works in this way. For example, you have a shoes. It's a real shoes. You take a photo of that. And then you apply the technology and create the digital 3D model of the shoes. You can do with this model anything you want. You just can rotate it, apply it in different environments, change the settings, anything basically. And it looks really nice from a visual perspective. This approach will be used not by all users, regular users, but also by the companies. Both users and companies will do scanning, but the difference will be how the scanning will be done. Business will also rely on LiDARs and terra scanners to build fully immersive 3D reproduction of anything, basically anything in Earth. Companies like Quixel demonstrate that it's possible to use this technology to create mid-size, mile-sized territories with detail down to this small group. Companies can simply license such scans, and therefore they will design any kind of environments on that areas, virtual areas. Another interesting technology is ArcGIS City Engine. You can create large metropolitan areas using this tool. So another question that one of you already asked, that there is interesting idea of creating a virtual world and distinguishing and differentiating it from the real world. But at the early stages of the metaverse, we will likely see that the virtual world closely resemble our real world. And there is one clear reason for that. And if you have your ideas, just please share them, because I really wanna hear your honest opinion. Why we want our virtual world look like our real world? Okay, the answer is simple. We need to create familiar experience. Yes, we would like to use it as a sandbox. Exactly. Thank you. that was one of the answers. We want to create a familiar experience for the first-time users. Imagine you enter the completely new space. You don't know what to do there. If this space is organized just like your physical space, you can use your knowledge, and by doing that, your onboarding will be easier. So you will know how to interact with things, how things works in that space. And by doing that, we will just make it easier for people to just understand how things work. Just want to say one more thing. I got an interesting question from one of you. How do you address security? I will answer that question in the last part of the presentation, but thank you. This is a really great question. Back to the presentation. You're probably familiar with the term skeuomorphism. If not, it's mimicking real-world objects in a virtual space. Not exactly virtual space, but in digital interfaces. One of the notable examples, I think you're all familiar with that, is when Apple introduced the first iPhone back in 2007, they know that to make this new tech accessible to the first-time user, they need to rely on familiar metaphors and help users to understand how a system works. That's why many objects in the first version of iOS, prior to version 7, they were recreation of the real-world physical objects. Now, it might look really strange why the book's shelf looked like a physical book shelf. But back to that time, it was really important because people, when they see familiar things, they know how to interact with them. And by doing that, a lot of people love the first version of the iPhones because they know how things work without too much brain power. But when it comes to the metaverse, the idea of skeuomorphism won't be limited only by a surface, like visceral level. It will be in other attributes of the virtual space, such as law of physics, gravity, electromagnetism, radio waves, and of course sound. They will work together to create this sense of immersion. And all of that will require extreme amount of computational power. Consider that the metaverse should be a virtual platform that will run on nearly every device in the world. It shouldn't require any special, I guess, consumer-based hardware. So there is interesting task that the metaverse creators will need to solve, how to make it easier for user to access the metaverse. I mean, how to reduce the friction from a technical perspective by organizing the system in a way that allow users with different kinds of devices access this platform. If you have your ideas, please share them, and we will go from there. I will also share my opinions about that. There are three options that helps us to solve this problem. First option is use cloud processing. It's like processing data in a cloud and rather than on local computer devices and sending the user a video signal. It seems like a good option because Google Stadia, rest in peace, and Amazon Luna, they all process all video gameplay in the cloud, then push the entire rendered experience back to the users as a video stream. The only problem with that is network latency. Ideally, if we will try this approach, the network, the backend, the servers that Metaverse will be deployed on, they should be located as close to the end users as possible. Because the more the distance will be, the more the latency will be, and it will be like a really glitchy experience for the users. The users will see their freezes and unexpected changes in the environment. It won't be a really comfortable experience because it will have a lot of delays. Another approach is client-side processing. I know that it might sound strange because I've already mentioned that it will require significant computational power, but consumer CPU and GPU improves much faster than the corporate infrastructure, and they are more frequently replaced. And if we check how the Apple Silicon performance changes over time, you can notice that by the end of the decade, the computational power of our devices will be much higher. So we can just expect that the devices will be capable to run really high fidelity environments. And also, some people believe that by 2030, our default device to access the space will be VR, both for the gaming and for the entertainment purposes and educational purposes. So it's likely that the computational power will be high enough to just support this kind of experience. And the last option is practice decentralized computing. I think some of you might be familiar with the Berkeley SETI home experience, where volunteers, they volunteered their computer to search for LN Live by Berkeley University. With so many powerful and often inactive devices in our homes and hands, it feels like we can create a system that efficiently utilizes them. And one interesting fact about this idea in context of the metaverse is that we can just reward people for doing that. For example, if you just send your hardware, allow your hardware to be used by people, you will be rewarded with the virtual coins that you can spend in the metaverse. So this is really interesting idea for the part of the virtual economy that we'll cover later in this section. Another area, a part of the hardware, is software. And I think that one of the reasons that we will have really significant changes in the 3D space will be the software that we use. Because I think that 3D coding tools will rapidly evolve. It's likely that we'll have a significant competition between different kinds of 3D engines. The reason why people will rely on the 3D engine is simple. I mean, developers, of course. developers no need to worry about technology changes or support new devices when they use the engine. They have a set of standards that they can rely on. And what's more important, 3D engines support cross-platforms. So it works on all kinds of hardware. And experience often optimized for different kinds of hardware. So we can just tweak engines to lower the number of frames, not frames, polygons to access the metaverse using the not so good devices. And really just the winner of the game, the competition will be the engine that will have I think the best community support. And while I think it will have significant competition between two of them, it will be Unity or Unreal engine, because both of the engines will have a really great community, and the one who will win will be the favorite, I guess. We'll also have the rise of the standards that we will use in the metaverse. Right now, they have a problem of exchanging the 3D data. It's not interchangeable most of the time. And some companies like Disney, Pixar, they use new kinds of open source standards like Universal Scene Description, also known as USD. This format allows the platforms like NVIDIA Omniverse to bring together assets from tools like Maya, Houdini, Unreal, AutoCAD, and more. Just create a shared environment using all the 3D objects created in a different kind of the tools. And we also will see the competition in the area of the frameworks. We will likely see the rise of frameworks that allow create a 3D experience. For example, right now we have a few notable candidates for that. One, that's a list of web frameworks for building virtual reality experiences. To be honest, I don't have my own favorite, but if you have, just share your favorite framework in the comments. I would love to hear that. And last but not least, we will need to just use the tools that allow create simulation of 3D spaces. And right now, one of the favorite tools is Omniverse by NVIDIA. It allows real-time 3D design collaboration and virtual world simulation. And it's available for free for creators and artists. So you can just create your design in the tools like Maya, import it in this tool, in Omniverse, and experience it. One of the interesting areas that we will also have significant changes in the nearest future. It's AI tools. And we will likely to see the rise of a co-creation with the help of AI. In the nearest future, tools like DALL-E and Midjourney will help us to create a 3D spaces. So right now, I want to show you how the process of co-creation will work, but I will need your help. We'll start with the tools. Let's start with the DALL-E. And what I want from you, I want to just suggest me what kind of the keywords you want me to try. Just make sure this is actually how the tool works. I mean, how the tool, what results the tool can produce. Just spend a few minutes just on ideas of what you wanna have this tool to visualize, and I will show how it works. All you need is just prompt using your natural language, so no need to be fancy, something as easy like, I don't know, flying cat. Anything that it comes to your mind, just share it with me and I will type it and I will show what kind of results the DALL-E can provide. Okay, let's try car in space. Here I write the text prompt. It can be anything actually, anything that comes to your mind. The tool, this DALL-E tool is powered by OpenAI. So it uses the trillions of images that the tool analyzes, and it tries to generate you the image that closely resemble to your intent. So here I will click generate, and I will show you how this works in a minute. What we will generate. Okay, so you can see car in the space, literally. We can just modify it to make it more specific. For example, luxury red cabrio. Let's make it sedan in space. The reason why these tools will get traction is because designers often use them as mood boards. So we just try to visualize something without spending any time on drawing anything. So we use the text prompts, and boom, the tool will give us some results that we can just rely on or use some of them in our work. The same way works for the DALL-E. Not just like a DALL-E works for the Midjourney, another tool that is popular among creators right now. The tool is slightly different. It just uses the text prompt in Discord channel. So to create that, we will just enter the tool and write our intention here. You can see actually the results of the work other people created. The man seeing the water, and the angel and the devil. So this is what the tool created for us for this intent. But for our purposes, let's imagine people running at the farm fest. I don't know. That's the thing that comes to my mind. It's not necessarily what you want, but it's what comes to my mind. We see that the progress, the tool tries to analyze different kinds of the imagery available on the internet, and creates the close visualization for your intention here. The problem with the tools like the Midjourney and DALL-E is right now we don't have much tools that allow us to tweak the imagery. For example, here we can just click different kind of the versions to allow the tool to experiment in this particular direction, but we cannot specify what exactly we don't like and like in this example. So if I click version 1, we will likely see that the tool will just do another iteration of that. Right now you will see that it starts creating a variation for the first image here. Yeah. So this is how things work for the DALL-E and for the Midjourney. I hope it was really exciting. As exciting for me as it was exciting to you. And that's actually the end of our first part of the presentation. So as I promised, I saw some questions in the Q&A section. I promise I will answer them at the end of the presentation, so don't be worried and don't be shy. If you want to just write me another question, I will be happy to answer them, even during the presentation or after the presentation. Okay, let's start with part 4. It's about creating an engaging experience. I mentioned a couple of times that Metaverse will be the most sophisticated digital platforms humans ever created, but the technical complexity of the platform is only one side of the coin. Another problem is how the interaction in this space will be designed. The goal is not only to maximize the number of the Metaverse users, but also to engage them in interaction so they will stay in the Metaverse for a longer period of time. So we will aim for good retention and good engagement. So good retention and engagement will naturally leads to higher revenue for Metaverse owners. So it's naturally for people to aim for that goal. But how can we engage users? The answer is we can entertain them. We need to give people a reason to be in the Metaverse. And entertainment can be one of the reasons to join the space. The key difference between Metaverse and the internet that we will have right now is that in the Metaverse, users aren't passive content consumers. They are active participants, players. And Metaverse will allow people to explore, create, socialize, and participate in a wide variety of experiences, such as visiting a Travis Scott virtual concert, for example, or attend a master class. Even today, the events like Travis Scott virtual concert or Ariana Grande virtual tour in a fortnight, they attract a lot of attention and had a lot of visitors, like millions of visitors. And when I mention the Metaverse will be players, I mean that when they think about the engagement, one of the first things comes to our mind is the games. It's not coincidence that all the leading virtual platforms that we will have right now, they are rooted in gaming. That's because games have been the most complex and scaled and diverse simulation. And people have fun playing games. And the best games that we will have in our space are games with a good storytelling. That is why when you design something, one of the ideas is not only make it really nice from a visual point of view, but also make it really interesting to people to interact with it. Because emotions are also based by visceral things like what we see, but also how it feels. And the good story can be a really interesting trigger for the people to experience things, to try things, to be what they want to be. And we can use the techniques that we have right now to just create a good storytelling. And technique, one of my favorite tool, it's a tool called Storyboard. The tool is used to describe the series of events in a way that it can be portrayed in a movie or in a game. So these tools is commonly used in the movie industry. It actually came from a movie industry and cartoon industry. But it can be used in any kind of the experience, games, Metaverse experience. And one of the interesting things that I want to mention is it's really important for the Metaverse users to consider the action and consequence effect. Because like in the real world, everything that the users will do in the Metaverse will impact the system. So it's a foundational rule for designers of that space is to keep this in mind. We will also need to ensure that the users can transition and in this world naturally and embrace the role of the character, the avatar in that naturally. And in order to To do that, we should use test tools like ShapeXR. These kind of tools allow us to test the metaverse experience and understand how it feels. So imagine you just not only create the virtual space, not only the right decent story, but also you as the main character access this story and experience it on your own. So it's really important because you will see the areas where you can do better, and you can just change something or tweak something to make it more to make it better for users. Another thing that is also important for creating an engaging experience is the problem of creating ecosystem. Creating the system that will provide some sort of the benefits for users. And the metaverse will be the system with a thriving economy. It will be the economy. The metaverse will involve different kind of goods, and people will be able to buy and sell things and exchange things for some kind of currency. What I mean when I mentioned at the beginning of the session that the metaverse will be a result of the creative user-generated content, it will be the result. It will be the part of it will be the system created by creator economy, and creator economy will be based on the three pillars. It's a content, services, and assets. Some people will produce content, other people will create services, and most of the people will own something or just try to get something. Will try to get something, assets. The assets will be virtual goods that will have a digital currency. One key difference, if we compare the metaverse with the Second Life that was mentioned previously, one key difference the metaverse will have in the sense of ownership. The metaverse will give the users a chance to truly own in metaverse items or land. It will unlock tremendous potential in user motivation. If we love to be in the metaverse, we can be profit from that. And technologies that will help us with that is called non-fungible tokens. I know that non-fungible tokens sounds like a buzzword, and a lot of people in the industry hate it. Says like it's a scam, but I think it's just interesting technology that allow us to certify the sense of ownership for digital items, either music or image, like an image of monkeys, anything actually that can be tokenized can be certified. And right now we will have the platforms like OpenSea that trades NFTs for exchange of digital currency like Ethereum. But in this kind of the platforms like the OpenSea is the first step in this direction. They will be integrated in the metaverse and become an integral part of the economical system, because people will buy and sell things that other people produce, and this mechanic will help us to just drive the user engagement. Another thing that I want to mention is as I said before, games and game mechanics will be really integral for the metaverse users. And we already have a few interesting mechanics that allow us to drive engagement. Here on this slide, you can see three of them. Let's start one by one. First is play to earn mechanic. It's really simple. It's possible to make the platform more addictive, but by allowing the user to just earn something when they play. The more users play, the more users spend the time in the system, the more benefits they will receive. It's easy, right? But the games like the Axie Infinity proves that this approach can work fine. I mean, the concept of that. Reward for contribution. When you produce something, the system, something valuable, of course, the system will compensate you for the content. Be it goods or digital assets, anything. When you contribute something, you will receive your money, digital currency in exchange for that. And the last one is complete game-like goals. I think from all these three techniques, this is the most interesting and the most powerful because it motivates user to perform virtual tasks in exchange for coins. But these tactics can be tied closely to the scenario, like story, and it drives crazy engagement because if story is engaging and you're also rewarded for your contribution, this is like a daydream for any player. Last question I have, but it's really important question. I want to ask you, will the metaverse will have the single owner? I mean, the economy, will it have the single owner? Just spend a minute or so, write me your ideas, and we will discuss it really briefly. While you're writing your answers, I will try to answer some of your questions. I will also want to just at the end of the session to just discuss some of the questions that you sent to me, because some of them are really interesting. Okay, back to the question. I think no, and the reason why the economy of the metaverse won't have a single owner is easy because it's simple because. When the one company will own the metaverse economy, it will be the most powerful company in the world. It's exactly the thing that is happened to the Ready Player One world, where the company that owns the digital world, Oasis, was owned by one company. So no, I think that we will have definitely the economy of the metaverse should be a market-based economy split between at least a few companies that are involved in metaverse creation rather than solely owned by one company. Okay, we move to the last part of the session, and one of you asked about security problems and the concerns that we will have regarding that. I will try to answer some of your questions, hopefully in this part of the session, but if I miss something, just write me a note and I will get back to you. The metaverse sounds exciting, but it also, as any new system, it will create new problems. Among the problems like high risk of harassment, health issues for the long-term sessions in the metaverse, access to the system, accessibility, and the problem of the consumer-based hardware, data privacy. This is a huge topic. A polarization of opinions and biased AI. The last one is really dangerous, I think. Let's cover some of the problems in this part. And I want to start with the first. Some of you might say it's an easy problem, but still, I think it's the most important problem to solve first, because the more people can access the metaverse, the better the place will be. And when we think about the access, there are three things we can support. First of all, accessibility, availability on the different mediums. the users should have a freedom of choosing devices that they want to use to access the metaverse. Of course, the VR will be primarily medium for the interaction. If you want to have a full immersion, you can choose the VR. But at the same time, what to do if you have the mobile phone? If you want a mobile phone, you can also stay in reality, you want in actual reality, but to choose to use AR device, such as glasses or mobile phone, to access the metaverse. So that's why I mentioned previously that the AR, along with the VR, will be two primary mediums for interaction with the metaverse. We also will have changes in the way we interact with the things. And interaction using voice, gestures, and gaze will be new ways of interaction. I think that the voice will be a good alternative to the body movement. Sometimes it will be easier to just use the voice to navigate something. Just say, I want to join the party on Bahamas. And boom, you just travel to the Bahamas, virtual Bahamas, of course. Rather than you just find the menu using your fingers and then find the right option, then click, 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 click. Saying that is much easier. So I think that we will have significant progress in voice recognition systems. Another domain is gestures. Right now, we are in a wild, wide west of gestures. Any designers, when they create new kind of products, they have a set of gestures that they can use, like swipe, zoom to pinch, and tap gestures. But apart from that, we don't have a standard library of gestures. It's likely when we will talk about the spaces like a metaverse, we will need to just agreement for all big players on what kind of gestures we will use. And after that, these kind of the gestures will become a vocabulary that designers will use. Without that, we won't have a really good progress in co-creation of the metaverse space. Another area is where we'll have progress is the different kind of libraries that we will use. Software development kits that allow us to just create, interact with objects or create objects, as I mentioned in the section about the 3D space, will rapidly evolve. And I believe that they will support more natural interaction. Along with the gesture vocabulary, they will design with accordance with vocabulary. They will support more natural interactions. And the last thing about the interaction is the gaze. One of the common reasons why people criticize the modern devices and modern technologies is that the people with limited abilities, or disabilities, they cannot interact with the devices. So, for example, the people that paralyzed, they cannot just use devices to interact. But interaction with other kinds of models, like interaction with voice, will be one of the reasons why Metaverse can be accessible for different kinds of users. And the technologies that we have right now allow that. For example, here is how the gaze interaction can work using the virtual headset. It's one of the reasons that we will likely have significant progress in headset devices in the coming years. Another reason why virtual devices will evolve is the frame rate. If you had a chance to experience early VR devices like Virtual Boy from Nintendo from 90s, like 1995, you probably remember the feeling of motion sickness that the device gave you. It's crazy, but I was able to play for 5 or 10 minutes, and after that, I was like, boom! It was a crazy, insane thing. Modern devices are more tolerant to users. I mean, users are more tolerant to devices. But still, the problem of the modern devices like Oculus Rift, they peaked at 72 Hz refresh rate. And many experts believe that the minimum threshold for avoiding disorientation and nausea and in virtual space is 120 Hz. That's why it's likely that we will have changes, number of frames. Last but not least, as I mentioned before about familiar experience, we'll also need to create familiar experience for all group of users. And one of the technique that we can apply for the virtual space is the technique of traditional onboarding. So we can just make the metaverse resemble real world and explain some new interactions that happens in that space in particular. So we can just show pop-up elements that we'll have in our apps and tell the user how they can interact with some objects. Of course, these pop-ups should be contextual. For example, when you see some object on the wall and you don't know what it is, you use your gaze. You focus your gaze for example, 10 seconds. The system understands that you try to understand what you're looking at, and it shows you contextual pop-up and that tells you that this object is, for example, switch, and you should just turn it on or turn it off by tweaking it, for example. Another area where we'll have a lot of changes is privacy. And right now, it's one of the most important, along with the accessibility areas for metaverse creators, because there is no clear requirements of how metaverse should be organized. If you try to think about GDPR requirements, it might be really crazy to think about that from the metaverse creator perspective, because it's really hard at the point to summarize all the properties that the system should be complied to, because the system is so huge, so demanding. But still, we need to should have some sort of a regulation how user data will be used, and because if it will be overused, we'll likely to see the concept of the hyper reality. So the hyper reality is an interesting concept portrayed by Kenichi Matsuda. In this world, it's a fictional world, but in this world, the company uses the information acquired from you, your own data, to for marketing purposes. So it uses it to sell you more things. And when you just glance on a shelf with the products, the company will just tell you that this product is just for you because it fits you 99%. It will be crazy because the metaverse creators will know a lot about you, and if they use this data, you won't be able to just understand where it's your own intention to buy something, or the company is trying to just sell you something. So that's why that data privacy should be really a huge topic. And another reason that I think we will need to discuss is the moderation of the virtual space. Right now, if we won't have a moderation, the space the metaverse will be filled with harassment and inappropriate behavior. It should be easier for user to decide where do you want to stay. Would they want to stay alone, or would they want to stay with a friends and family, or with people from the concert? And it should be easier for user to block anyone they want. So, for example, if you don't like the person, don't want to spend the time, it's up to you to decide. So you just can block it. And it also should be moderation for the virtual spaces, especially parenting control. Some companies like Tencent Games, they use facial verification system to keep tabs on children and teenagers playing between 10 p.m. and 8 p.m. They simply, when they see that the person is trying to access the system, they simply analyze the face, scan the face, and they say, no, you don't allow them to do that. It's easier, but it's effective. And moderation for the adult, senior populace, users from 21 and older, it also will be the spaces will be moderated and will be moderated by humans and by AI. And that's why I mentioned the problem of a bias the AI will have, because it's right now it's really hard for the human to decide when you should just block someone. For example, if one person is standing next to another person, I mean, one avatar is standing next to another avatar, suddenly start jumping on the top of the head of another person. Is this appropriate behavior or not? It's really hard for the moderators to decide. But when it comes to the AI can be really biased and that, and it can simply block the person. But it might turn out that this was really appropriate behavior. On that note, I want to finish my presentation today.